Hello learners, and welcome to chapter 6, where our focus is going to be bones and skeletal tissue. So when we're thinking of skeletal tissue, we're thinking of our cartilages. So let me go ahead and get a better color than this. We're thinking of cartilages and also osseous tissue or bone tissue. Okay, that's going to be what we start off first. And then we're going to talk about bone tissue specifically and what they're made of. Basically what bones are made of in general, which is going to be osteoblasts, osteocytes, and we'll also get into osteoclasts. Okay. Now, if you're looking at this picture here on the screen, you'll see that we see some osteon here, and we do see some lacunae, and in those lacunae will be our osteocytes. So little details like that we'll get more information about. Let's go ahead and focus on what we're going to be doing for this chapter. Now, the theme of the chapters as we're going forward, because we're dealing with organisms, is we need to focus on structure, function, and location of things. That's going to be the things that we kind of talk about a lot of: structure, function, and location. So we get to learn today is going to be skeletal system overview, which you'll see a lot of because this is just the bones and skeletal tissue. But when we get into chapter 7, we'll get more details about the skeletal system itself. Then we'll focus on skeletal cartilages. That's going to be our hyaline, our fibroblasts, or not fibroblasts, our fibrocartilage, which is made of fibroblasts, and our elastic cartilage. Then we're also going to get into osseous tissue or bone tissue. Then we're going to focus on the function of bones, and we have 7 important functions that we normally see, classifications of bones based on their shape and locations, and then finally get into that bone structure. So we'll see some gross anatomy and some bone markings to help us be able to identify different parts of bones and why some parts may look a little bit different. And then we'll get into some microscopic anatomy, like you may see here, what the actual osteons that we saw in the previous slide is really all about. And then finally, we'll talk quickly about some chemical composition, what type of chemicals are bones made of. So we'll get into those details as well. But first, let's get into our skeletal system overview. Now, your skeleton is very amazing. It's super dynamic. It can give us so many different functions, but also one thing that it has the ability to do is repair and remodel itself, okay, through all those different cells that it's forming. Those osteoblasts, our osteocytes, and our osteoclasts are going to help with maintenance and repair and remodeling of the bone itself. Okay, now the bone or the skeletal system, it includes 206 bones, okay? And guess what? Those bones are their own individual organs. So some folks will be like, okay, we're just talking about the skeletal system. Where are the organ parts of this? Well, the bones are the organs, and when they come together, they form the skeletal system. So there's 206 bones, and if you go to your study guide for chapter 6, you'll see that we have the axial and appendicular skeleton bones that you need to know. I also have the joints information that you need to know, and also the muscles that you need to know as we go through our chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 chapters, okay? Skeletal system also includes joints and ligaments. That's going to be chapter 8. 206 bones would be basically chapter 7. We'll be dealing with cartilages in chapter 6. Joints and ligaments is going to be chapter 8. We'll get into some details about yellow and red bone marrow in this lecture as well. Okay. Now, the skeletal system has many roles. It's going to be there for support, protection of like inner organs. Like, for example, we have the skull here. What is the skull protecting? The good old brain. And movement, of course. So you want to be able to move your arms, move your legs, okay, if you have that ability. Mineral homeostasis, meaning that if we don't have enough calcium in our bodies, then the bone has the ability to use osteoclasts to break down bone and provide that calcium for homeostasis. Also blood cell formation, which is really amazing. So yes, your blood is made from red bone marrow, that of course are part of your bones, and then even hormones in the endocrine system. So osteocalcin. We're not going to get into a lot of focus on that, but I just want to let you know that that exists as well. Now, the organization of the skeletal system is going to be our axial skeleton versus our appendicular skeleton, and that's what is going to be our focus for chapter 7. Then, for us, we're definitely going to talk about the different shapes and therefore locations of bone types. And that's really going to be that classification of the bone that we saw in the previous slide. So yes, we'll get into that for chapter 6. So there's going to be short bones, irregular bones, sesamoid bones, and of course long bones. And we'll get into the anatomy of those long bones as well. Then we have to talk a lot about why bones are hard, right? So where do they get their hardness from, but also have the flexibility to both be their own individual organs? We're going to get to talk about that composition when it comes to collagen fibers and also hydroxyapatite, which is going to be a part of the hardness of bones, but also it can be having minerals within that matrix as well. We'll be talk about those too. And then finally, we will get a little bit of time to talk about growth in joints. Not as much. That's not going to be our main focus. When we get to joint types in chapter 8, yes, we'll have more information about the different types of joints between bone, like fibers, cartilaginous, and synovial. But when it comes to growth, one thing that we just need to know is that cartilage is what we all start off as, meaning when we're fetuses and then, of course, going to, well, we're embryos and then going to a fetus, we all have cartilage as used as our skeletal system. And as we grow and, of course, mature, then that cartilage is going to build actual bone and a skeletal system, and then you continue to grow. So sometimes you might hear the growing pains, and that is real because your bones are actually going to be going from cartilage to forming your bones of your actual skeletal system. And yes, that stretch and compression is definitely something that you can feel. Okay, folks? So this is going to be like our overall skeletal system overview. You might see this slide again. Of course, I'll change it as we get more detailed. But I want to give you an overview of what you're going to see for chapter 6, 7, and 8. Let's go ahead and get into chapter 6 fully, though, and talk about our skeletal tissues. See you then.